music. Yeah, that's good. Here we go. Welcome to Galaxy Brains, the weekly podcast from Galaxy Research. Yo, my team is fit. Put us on the starship. 33 jets, you ain't hurting me yet. And I'm cutting up the beat like I scarred it. Let me start it. Getting perky on the mic. If you turkeys wanna fright, rap is turkey when I write. Never murky, but I'm quirky when I'm dirty. And I'm flying like a kite. I'd be lying if I told you I'm not ready for a fight. Right gas. I got a tank full more. And I hope that everybody knows I'm thankful for. On a mission with the vision can be painful though. But Bitcoin is efficient, yo, it can be gainful. So see me stacking them like blocks. Pull the yacht into the dock. Dropping coins and cold cards and I'm counting them like clocks. Dousing me, I'm hot. Yo, I'm burning like a battery. And happy Thanksgiving from my people at the Galaxy. As always, I'm your host, Alex Thorne, head of firm-wide research at Galaxy Digital. Thank you for listening to Galaxy Brains. Happy Thanksgiving to all of my listeners. We are so thankful for you, and thank you for listening. Beimnet Abebe from Galaxy Trading, he is our guest this week. We're going to talk at length just with Beimnet. It's not just a macro and markets conversation. We're going to cover a range of topics with him. Before we get to that, I need to remind you to please refer to the link to the disclaimer in the podcast notes and note that none of the information in this podcast constitutes investment advice or an offer, recommendation, or solicitation by Galaxy Digital or any of its affiliates to buy or sell any securities. Phineas, it is Thanksgiving. Today, the day, well, actually, we're recording on Tuesday, but the day that you hear this, if you listen on audio, is Thursday, Thanksgiving 2023 in the United States. Again, thank you for all of our listeners. We are so thankful for you. Phineas, what are you doing for Thanksgiving?
You know, I am spending it with family. We will be getting in the car and driving to an undisclosed location to spend it with family, turkey, stuffing.
The whole thing?
I am a stuffing guy.
That's your favorite?
I am not a mashed potatoes guy. I'm also a dark meat guy.
Oh,
and I
me
love
too, by
cranberry.
the way. Yeah, you like the cranberry in the can or like some kind of awesome homemade one?
Cranberry in a can.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of people's favorite.
Yeah.
We're doing the same. Traditional, getting together with family. I hope everyone who's listening now is having a great Thanksgiving with your family or your friends or your loved ones. Again, we're so thankful for our listeners. We're happy to bring you Galaxy Brains every week. And you know what? Let's just get right into it with Beimnet. This is a special episode. We got no guest. Beimnet is our guest. I think you'll enjoy it. Let's go now to our friend Beimnet Abebe from Galaxy Trading. As always, Beimnet, welcome to Galaxy Brains.
Thanks for having me.
It's been an exciting week. Before we get into some topics, and by the way, we have no other guests this week, so we're going to go a little longer with Beimnet than usual as a Thanksgiving Day special. Before we get into some of the other topics we're going to talk about, what's been going on in macro since last week? Anything notable to talk about?
Yeah, the main thing that I've been kind of focusing on is kind of the weakness in the dollar. Right. Structurally, we've been in a dollar bull market basically since the Fed started raising rates. But now that they've kind of signaled that they are most likely done with hiking, we've seen a major reversal in the dollar. The two big ones that I've been paying attention to has been, dollar China. That's come off a lot, and dollar yen. Obviously, we were talking about, currency intervention a couple weeks ago. And, is the Japanese... Are they going to move aggressively off yield curve control or not? But long story short, you've seen an aggressive move in the dollar. Dollar yen's gone from 151 and change to 147 and change, and that's a big move in G10FX.
That's a lot.
And it signals that, the market does believe that the Fed's likely done. You've also seen decent moves in G10FX and, things like cable and euro off the lows. And I think... when you pair that with the kind of market reaction you've had recently in the rate market, I think it's appropriately justified. Twos have been consistently below 5%, and you've seen the back end take out significant technical levels. So 450 was a big technical level on tens. You're trading at 441 now. And so the pressure of the back end supply and back end bonds breaking has abated a bit as well. And so what you've seen is a turn in the dollar and a turn in rates, and that's been a function of a turn in Fed signaling and a turn in the data that we've seen. And I think given the current levels, I think market pricing is kind of fair. But you've got over 100 basis points of cuts priced in over the next, 12 months or so.
Yep.
And that's a lot. But in terms of, of what we're seeing in the data right now and what we're likely going to see in the data going forward, I think that market reaction is probably appropriate.
So it's just an ongoing story too, and nothing. I wouldn't say that this sounds similar to what you've been saying. So whereas we sort of that structural shift we've talked about really happened a couple weeks ago.
Correct. Yeah.
What about cryptocurrency markets? I mean, I think here we are, basically 37K at Bitcoin. You know, I mean, a rising channel clearly, like higher lows, but not breaking out since we did break out.
Yeah.
Altcoins, rotated a bit, but now also cooling off. Feels
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think in crypto, the bull trend is still in place, as you've said, higher and higher lows, like moving average support holding, and you're setting marginally higher highs. High level, you know, I love Bitcoin. I think it's going higher. It's going to go trade at new all-time highs eventually. But the indicators that I look for in a market being stretched are definitely being ticked off, right? Like overbought on a lot of technical indicators. Funding having gotten elevated, vol having gotten elevated, spot being at local highs, meme tokens pumping like crazy, and alt pumping like crazy. And so those check boxes for a trade being stretched have been hit.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think, what you're really seeing now in crypto is really just still a lack of sellers.
Yeah. Right.
If you really believe in the Bitcoin story, if you really think we're going to add billions of dollars in AUM to these new ETF products eventually, and that, the halving is going to create a huge supply shock, there's no reason to really get out at 37,000. And if you just think about the perspective of most investors, right? Everybody that's been involved in crypto is averaged in over time. Some people bought, at 10,000, at 20, at 30, 40, 50, 60, et cetera. A lot of people have blended averages that are around here. And so, why are you really going to sell going into a big catalyst event? And also, if you believe that central banks are turning, which they are, right? Like Europe is continuing to have weak data. China's having weak data. U.S. is likely stop hiking, right? And so there's a turn happening, with central bankers. And typically when central bankers turn, that's your signal to buy risk assets. Largely speaking, asset prices, I'm not saying everything's a Ponzi, but there's a lot of, let's say, froth in the market, right? And the question is with the Fed, are they trying to get rid of that froth, or are they okay with the current level of froth and the conditions? And they told you they're okay with that level of froth,
right? Because they're really focused on employment and on inflation.
Yeah,
right?
But here's the thing: they're traders as much as anyone else. They get a negative payrolls print, right? People start losing jobs, and the headlines start to be about, oh, people are losing jobs, they're struggling. Seems like, oh, there's more job losses ahead. Housing market starts to crack a little bit.
Then
they will be so quick to flinch that people will have no idea what hit them. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, they are supposed to be independent and, supposed to engage in monetary policy in a way that's not short-term thinking, but long-term.
Cold and academic.
Right? But when people start losing jobs, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And that's, when they hear it from every single person, and that's what hits home the most. And the other thing to keep in mind is that recovery in the economy and just the way the U.S. is structured right now, it's a tale of two cities, right? The lower income brackets, you've already started to see such a material downturn in some of the important metrics that you think about, right? The credit card delinquencies for folks, the auto delinquencies, the portion of money they have to spend on rents. And God forbid you throw in a weak labor market on top of that, and people start getting laid off aggressively. There's going to be a ton of folks that are just so uncomfortable. And, is it the Fed's mandate to really think about that lower income stuff? They've told you yes before, right? They did a major shift in their economic policy a couple years ago where they're like, oh, we want the recovery to be broad-based. We want to look at measures like Hispanic unemployment, African American unemployment. all of these things. And so they have a history of having a qualitative approach as well as a quantitative approach to, engaging in monetary policy. So when you start to see layoffs, aggressive ones, and not labor unions getting 40% raises, I think the turn is going to be much more dramatic than people anticipate. And so long story short, like cutting rates and the Treasury being less aggressive with back-end supply, and inflation that's not ripping higher is going to be constructive for risk assets.
Yeah.
And basically, like, it's just, and then you throw in the fiscal dominance side. There's going to be lots of reasons why, you'd want to own Bitcoin.
Yep, understood.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's this asset is just, it's set up so well to move higher, especially once an ETF launches and you get the Fed turn at some point next year in a much more aggressive way. Things like gold will rip, silver will rip, like dollars will sell off more, hard assets will go bid at some point. And so I just, I remain constructive on this market, but short-term cautious because of just how quickly we've come up and some of the indicators that are flashing a yellow right now.
Okay, let's talk about a couple other things. This
Absolutely.
is great. So Argentina just elected a self-described anarcho-capitalist, Javier Milei, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, as president. And
I wish he got a better haircut. Just saying.
He won resoundingly. I think the final numbers I saw maybe were 59-41, which is dramatic. I mean, in democratic elections, that's pretty much a landslide.
Yeah.
So he has a mandate now too, and he has joked or said humorously, I don't know if he's joking, about cutting like every department of the federal government there. He has his main, I would say, for international markets, his main proposed policy is to dollarize the economy. He did an advertisement where he smashed an effigy of the Argentinian central bank with Thor's hammer. He has wielded a chainsaw in public, the obvious idea being that he's going to chop down all this fiscal excess. And he has spoken positively about Bitcoin, although I'll caution he's not like literally calling to Bitcoinize the economy, say like Nayib Bukele and El Salvador. This is the 23rd largest GDP in the world, Argentina. It's one of the top, I would say, I believe it's the third largest Latin American economy behind Brazil and Mexico.
They got like almost 50 million people as well.
Yeah, and so I don't know any take on this, or does or how are markets reacting or anything like that in your mind? I mean, it's a big economy. It's a notable shift.
The currency has continued to depreciate. Yeah. And I think last I checked, Argentine peso was like 355, maybe a bit higher.
Yeah. So 355 pesos to buy $1 American dollar.
Correct.
It's a lot of paper.
It was 40 5 years ago.
Wow.
And their rate of inflation on goods is like this year I think is north of 100, but historically it's like north of 50%.
Yeah.
Imagine you buy this can of soda today with $10, like, it's going to cost you $20 like tomorrow. Like the rate of inflation is so high that it's going to be a different price next week.
Yeah.
Like that's insane.
Very hard to run a business or anything like that.
Anything. And so, dollarization does make sense. It's already a very dollar-based economy in terms of
the black market and stuff, but yeah.
It's very active.
Right. And
so,
Peter McCormack, from What Bitcoin Did, he did a podcast documentary series recently, and he found many people using Tether.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is dollars,
Yeah.
In the
and I think if you're hitting the nail on the head. Like dollarization does mean adoption of stables.
Yeah,
right, and that's the easiest and fastest way to trade dollars around.
And yeah, there's been pretty wide. I know several, and I have several good friends who are Argentinian Bitcoiners, and makes sense. I mean,
a lot of them.
Yeah, because in fact there are quite a number, and I think I checked, and there's been 9. The country has defaulted 9 times in the last 100 years.
Yeah.
So clearly, I think attempting a different policy makes sense. But
this is where a lot of EM is headed. Like Argentina is in the headlines now. They got a lot of people, and it's a much more advanced economy. But this is the real story of EM. Every day, people's purchasing powers get eroded. every day, people that don't have their money in dollars, right? Like they struggle,
And
or they
ours
don't own hard assets.
Ours has been getting eroded, but at a much slower rate than many of these emerging market
Correct, and
economies.
that's simply because the U.S. has the the nukes and the FU factor.
That's what you said, right?
And
We have
so, absolutely, it makes a huge difference when the entire world wants to be in your capital markets. They want to own your currency. Like, it prevents it from selling off on a relative basis. And so, I think this is just a reality of like every EM nation. If you play out, like, pick out any random EM country. If you play out their fiscal situation over the next 10 years, it's not going to look
Doesn't
great.
look good. Yeah.
If you already have high rates of inflation, like, it's going to be tough to change that, because the key thing about inflation is it's as much to do about actual inflation as it has to do with expectations of inflation. If you've been born in a country that's had excessive inflation for 20 years, you're gonna
You're used to
expect
it.
that
Yeah.
every year going forward, and that's
Which
gonna
makes
anchor
it stickier and
absolutely.
harder. Yeah.
And so that's why like the U.S. is so like aggressive about stamping out inflation, and that's why they care about market-based inflation expectations, et cetera, because they're an important determinant into actual inflation.
So in 2022, the Central Bank of Argentina banned banks from offering crypto in any form. And then in May 23, the Central Bank in Argentina banned payment processors from offering crypto in any form. So you know that there is a lot of crypto there. So you know it's all black market basically, or off the books and whatnot. And I wonder, regardless of whatever sort of explicit crypto policy President Milei adopts, if he is going to take an axe to big parts of the central bank, such as taking away their power to print money, which is what dollarization would mean, right? Presumably, formally, though, some of those policies might get rolled back at the central bank as well. If, let's say, there is no central bank, which, I mean, I don't know, but he did smash the central bank with Thor's hammer in an advertisement.
Yeah, I mean,
so it might be
just,
a more.
I don't.
Yeah.
There's no developed economy that doesn't have a central bank.
So
It's a hard premise to begin with, and that's why.
And to your point,
he's very tough to take seriously.
I saw that in his acceptance speech. I forget the exact language, but it did seem like he actually kind of walked back some of what he's been saying.
Yeah.
He said something like, we're going to have like strong reforms of the central bank or something like that. In any case, he is a wildly popular, populist, extremely pro-capitalist, anti-socialist, self-described president in a country where a very socialist government has been in charge for decades and has had runaway rampant inflation. So
I mean, but it's like, wait, like, I'm going to solve like 100 years of bad economic policy that's compounded itself over time with a currency that's run away, a rate of inflation that's run away. I'm going to do it by cutting social spending programs for a couple of years. Like, come on, buddy.
It's going to be tough. We'll see.
Okay.
Let's go on. Another major story in cryptocurrency markets just happened. We're recording on Tuesday this week. Just happened. Changpeng Zhao, known as CZ, Binance CEO founder, has pled guilty to to criminal charges relating primarily to money laundering, bank secrecy, illicit finance.
Yep.
And Binance, the corporate, has, like, international Binance, has agreed to pay $4.3 billion in fines to, I guess, the DOJ, the CFTC, and the Treasury. But the CZ has apparently flown
to Washington,
flown to Washington State, to plead guilty, and he will personally pay a fine. Again, I'm recalling what the headlines just were moments ago, so if this changes, my apologies, but will personally pay a $50 million fine and give up CEO, and he's tweeted that he is stepping down. Richard Tang will take over, who is an executive at Binance. This has been, so this is not, by the way, SEC was not related here, where they also have a case against Binance US. So this doesn't necessarily resolve everything, but this apparently resolves these long rumored and reported on federal criminal investigation into Binance and CZ. What's your reaction?
Well, my gut tells me that it's left tail risk that's been eliminated from the market. Now, I think a lot of this was already expected. There's been stuff leaking for months now of a purported settlement. And so I think, the $4 billion number might be a little bit above or below certain people's expectations. but loosely it was a fully priced event. And
I mean, you look at
and the prices are really unchanged.
Yeah.
I mean, B&B goes up and down a lot.
I mean,
but
even this morning there was the story that there would be a press conference by DOJ, CFTC, Treasury, and we came down a little bit. But then once it was more information came out about what it was, and we basically repriced right back to where it's that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, I think the most important thing is that these are the kinds of things that needed to happen in order for the U.S. to feel really good about opening up opening up the U.S. capital market to crypto, via the ETF and via other means. Yeah. But in order if you asked me 6 months ago what needed to happen for the government to feel comfortable allowing a Bitcoin ETF, I'd say Binance, right, and possibly
other things, maybe
other stablecoin related things. I would say potentially. And so I think this is just another hurdle that's been removed from the market. It's a left tail scenario that's gotten cut away. And I think that's, again, why you're sitting basically 1,000 points from year-to-date highs in Bitcoin. Like, it's really tough to ignore. Like, this asset class is screaming at you that it wants to go higher. Like, I get it. I gave the whole spiel about, all these warning signs happening. But taking a step back, like a 2, 5, 10-year view, like this is just such an own. The government's telling you we're okay with U.S. capital markets being involved now.
We're getting better clarity in that regard. I did want
it's becoming like less of a political issue as well. It's kind of my sense, right? It's like,
well, the illicit finance thing has been of top of mind the last few months.
Yes.
Of course, since the attacks by Hamas on Israel and on 10/7, and then the subsequent reporting about Hamas's use of cryptocurrency. That was part of this settlement. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland specifically referenced that they've secured a monumental fine, and so there's a disgorgement here or something, and there will be ongoing monitoring. Again, this is criminal settlement. So, but he did say when he started that the fact that it was Treasury, DOJ, and CFTC all up there together represented the U.S. government's whole of government approach to this asset class. Notably absent from that podium was SEC Chairman Gary Gensler.
Yes.
So and then the SEC announced just yesterday on Monday a new, I'm going to say Coinbase-like case against Kraken.
Correct.
Mostly focused again on the National Securities Act and the National Exchange Act. So going after Kraken for allowing the trading of supposedly unregistered securities, and then itself not registering as an exchange under the Exchange Act, and then so similar case, and that case is really first of all, these are civil cases, the SEC, right? So these are getting litigated. I think Kraken released a very strong statement saying they're going to fight it. They believe the SEC is wrong on the substance, wrong on the law, whatever. But again, SEC not up there. So I think the point, though, is that there are still those regulatory civil cases. Both there's Coinbase, there's now Kraken, there's Binance US, right? That's not settled here. But these are, I think, to your point, like that DOJ story. I mean, I think the Journal reported in 22 that they had an investigation into Binance. Right, this was sort of a big tail risk. I mean, it felt like theoretically, although I think the length of time, there were reasons why we didn't think, and why the market, I think, is mostly flat on the news. It's just, I think, ultimately quite positive that this story ended with a plea deal and a settlement, rather than like SWAT teams kicking down a door, or like story that CZ is like fleeing or something, exactly. Right? That would have been much more negative. But although there are still these other things.
The other things, right? Like they mentioned DeFi, and like they mentioned how any DeFi protocol or person engaging in activity with U.S. folks needed to apply those laws, and we've seen all the mandates from Treasury,
you got
the
DOJ,
accounting standards,
right? You got the broker rule from IRS, you got the Exchange Act definition from SEC, you got these new FinCEN guidelines. They all point at DeFi and say you need to do BSA compliance.
Yeah.
Which is the same thing that Binance is getting hit. It's very clear that basically outside the SEC, the main thing the U.S. government cares about is illicit finance control, right?
And as they should.
Right.
Right? Like, that's an appropriate, like, stance to have as a government agency. You want people to respect your sanctions, right? And you don't want terrorism to get financed.
Right.
Like, those,
No one
and
wants that.
you should have protections against that. Now, like, you know, is there lower hanging fruit that they could be going after? More effective use of their resources?
Certainly, yes. Sometimes,
And it does feel that way at times. But at the end of the day, like, one of the main reasons why I love, like, U.S. capital markets is the rule of law is respected.
Yeah.
For the most part.
And we have good property rights.
Good property rights.
Right.
And, like, Kraken, like, they will get their day in court.
Right.
With, you know, and
which that says a lot.
and
That's a fair point, actually. You don't just,
mm-hmm.
It's not like we've seen in, like, you know, when, like, what was that story? Star, the, was it OKX guy, like, years ago, just, like, disappeared.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, what?
No.
People don't typically just get, if it's a criminal case, you'll get your day in court. If it's a civil case.
But your idea of property rights are really important, right? Like, I'll give you an example. Like, I have a person that owns an apartment in an EM economy, right? They had it built somewhat recently. They still don't have their deed, right? And if they wanted to go to court for that thing, it'd take them like 6+ years to litigate that.
Right.
And God knows, like, what would happen, right? You got places with tons of government, you know, turnover, right? And so having a place with, you know, such strong rule of law, you know, is ultimately, like, you know, one of the main reasons why you've got such a strong capital market.
Absolutely.
So, like, a sign like this, 4 agencies getting together right before an ETF potentially gets approved, et cetera. Like, big picture, it's a good thing because that will mean that more institutions will get a lot more comfortable because the government will be like, we've cleaned up crypto.
Yep. All right, before we wrap, it is, as you listen to this, if you listen as it just came out, it is Thanksgiving morning in the United States. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Beimnet, what are your plans for Thanksgiving?
Well, I plan to listen to All I Want for Christmas because now it's appropriate to
You're
listen to it.
You're a big Christmas guy?
I love Christmas.
Yeah.
I love Thanksgiving too.
Sure.
I mean, I love, you know, eating, family, all of that.
Yeah.
But I do love my, you know, Michael Bublé holiday album, you know, All I Want for Christmas, you know, the jingles and stuff is great. Also, ugly sweaters for those watching on
YouTube.
On YouTube. I mean, this is
I like that sweater.
I do like it too. But my running joke right now is it's okay to wear ugly sweaters in the holidays.
Yeah, it is.
It's the most appropriate time. But you know, high level, I'm very thankful for the year we've had in crypto. I'm very thankful for all of the listeners that we have on Galaxy Brains and the viewers on the other platform. I'm happy to be in crypto. And I got to tell you, I mean, it didn't feel that way this time last year.
No, it didn't.
And we've come a long way, and it's important to have perspective.
Beimnet Abebe, my friend from Galaxy Trading, thank you so much. That's it for this week's episode of Galaxy Brains. Thanks to our guest, Beimnet Abebe from Galaxy Trading, as always, and to our producer, Phineas. We love doing this show. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. If you celebrate it, we're very thankful for you. And know that, like, there's this common joke about Thanksgiving and other holidays in December and January. People go home, crypto people, Bitcoin people, they go home. Their parents are either ecstatic, their parents and family and friends are either ecstatic that they told them about crypto or Bitcoin. If it's last year, they're probably furious. I don't know what it's going to be like this year, but try to explain to them that we've come a long way over the last year. A lot of the industry has matured, and there are a lot of reasons to be positive about what's there in the future. But keep it measured because it's still a volatile industry. Look, we'll catch you next week, and everyone have a safe and happy holiday weekend. Thanks for listening to Galaxy Brains, the weekly podcast from Galaxy Research. If you enjoy the show, please like, rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. To follow Galaxy Research, sign up for our weekly newsletter at gdr.email, read our content at galaxy.com/research, and follow us on Twitter at GLXYResearch. See you next week.